You are listening to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. That was Feels by Calvin Harris featuring Pharrell Williams, and this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. Again, I'm your host, Jell. I'm still bringing up a little bit of information for the top of the show, but I do have a few announcements. Apparently, there will be a phone interview with Zepparella, an all-female Led Zeppelin tribute band, this Friday, the 22nd. So please stay tuned for that. Tune in on Friday to hear the interview with Zepparella, find out what it's like being a all-female Led Zeppelin tribute band. And also, this week is Deaf Awareness Week. No, that would be next week. Next week is Deaf Awareness Week, from the 25th to the 29th. So that is certainly a thing. There'll be a bunch of stuff about, being deaf and deaf culture here on the Florissant Valley campus. So that could be very interesting. I know that we have like one of the premier sign language classes here, or something like that. Admittedly, I haven't taken the sign language class, but I keep hearing good things about it and the students that come out of it. So we got all sorts of deaf culture things going on here at Florissant Valley Community College, here in beautiful Ferguson. So, we do like to kick the show off with a, let's see, 1 second. Yeah, we like to kick the show off with what new games have come out this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are coming to theaters. So, let's get things started. What PS4 games came out this week? Well, for starters, we got Blackguards 2, Burly Men at Sea, Echo, End Space VR, Factotum 90. It says Final Fantasy 11 here. Really? Did they release that on PS4? Wait, no, that's 9. I'm sorry, I'm bad with Roman numerals today. I'm Roman numeral lexic. Yes, Final Fantasy 9 has apparently hit the PlayStation 4 store, and I completely missed it. Also, Hidden Dragon Legend, which looks kind of interesting. Inc. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Minecraft Story Mode Season 2, Episode 3, Jailhouse Block. Morphight. NBA 2K18. Pankapu. Robonauts. Shopkeep. The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus is now on PlayStation 4. The Coma Recruit. In 2 days, so Friday, when that whole Zepparella interview is going down. Yes, this Friday we'll have Caveman Warriors, which looks pretty alright. Project Cars 2, Raiders of the Broken Planet, and the Lego Ninjago movie, the video game. Right, so that's what's come to PlayStation 4. That's what came to PlayStation 4 this week. What's going on Xbox One? Xbox One got Blackguards 2, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, Minecraft Story Mode Season 2, Episode 3, Jailhouse Block, NBA 2K18, Morphight, Pankapu, Super Hydora, and let's see what else. And then, yeah, they'll also be getting Caveman Warriors Inc., Project Cars 2, Raiders of the Broken Planet, Revolve, SEUM, Speedrunners from Hell, the Coma Recruit, and the Lego Ninjago movie. Let's see what's coming to Nintendo Switch, or rather what came to Nintendo Switch. This week, Nintendo Switch got Morphight, Soul Dam, Drop Connect Erase, SteamWorld Dig 2, Thimbleweed Park, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Pokken Tournament DX. Oh wait, that's Friday. Friday, the Switch will be getting Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Pokken Tournament DX, and the Lego Ninjago movie. And then, let's see, 3DS got Fruitakia 2 and Guide the Ghost. And PlayStation Vita got 36 Fragments of Midnight, Burly Men at Sea. Burly Men at Sea. I'm bad at talking today. That's unfortunate. Factotum 90, Mary Skelter Nightmares, Mecho Tales. So, good times there. That's what came out this week. What's coming out next week? What's down the pipe? Well, the PlayStation 4 will be getting Batman, The Enemy Within, Episode 2, The Pact. Blue Reflection. Oh, holy crap, that's coming out. Yeah, that's the turn-based magical girl RPG. Like, it kind of looks like Persona-ish if it was magical girls. Because you're still, like, it's all about, like, being in school and making relationships with people, and then you hop into an alternate dimension and fight evil and stuff. So that's a thing. Also, Danganronpa V3, Killing Harmony, the Don't Starve Mega Pack, DreamWorks Voltron VR Chronicles. Yes, there's a Voltron VR game coming out next week. Oh, I'm gonna need. I'm gonna need money. Fallout 4 Game of the Year Edition, FIFA 18, Hob, Light Tracer. Oh, hey, that's a VR game. Light Tracer kind of looks like Captain Toad's Adventures, except in VR. Pinball FX3, Ruiner, Senran Kagura, Peach Beach Splash, which is a very fast-paced, squirt gun-based, third-person shooter. I think it's okay. I imported the Japanese one. I don't think it's amazing, but I will say you can only get the physical release if you get the special edition. So, that's kind of a thing. Also, speaking of water, there's apparently a game called Splasher coming out next week, along with SteamWorld Dig 2, and VR Carts already came out and is ridiculously overpriced. I don't know why that's on the list. Also, they are claiming that Summon Night 6 Lost Borders First Edition will be coming out next week. I don't believe it. See, Summon Night 6 is being translated by our good friends at the basically Reborn Working Designs. And they've already delayed this game by a year. So, what's another month? I'm calling it now. It's going to get delayed again. If it actually comes out, we will all be shocked. Be interesting to see how a Working Designs translation holds up in 2017, because let me tell you, a lot of the love for them comes from desperation, not quality. Let's see, also, White Day, A Labyrinth Named School will be coming out. I believe there's a VR version of that as well. That's like a Korean horror game. And on the 29th, is that? No, wait, nope. Yes, 29th is next week. Good. On the 29th, FIFA 18, Gundam Versus will be hitting America. Pharaonic, I don't know what that is, sounds interesting. The Girl and the Robot, and yeah, that would be next week for the PlayStation 4. What's Xbox One getting next week? Also, Batman the Enemy Within Episode 2 The Pact. Xbox One is getting the Don't Starve Mega Pack, Fallout 4 Game of the Year Edition, FIFA 18, Pinball FX3, Ruiner, Splasher, World Racing Championship 7, and end of the month, Cuphead will be coming out on Xbox One. I believe that's an Xbox One exclusive. Also, FIFA 18, Forza Motorsport 7, and Pharaonic. Hey, so new Forza, that's nice. And then, what is the Switch getting? The Switch will be getting Arcade Archives Mario Brothers. This is actually relatively significant, because Nintendo doesn't usually port their actual arcade games. They keep porting their NES games, and that's been, like, a particular sore point. There are differences between the NES and arcade versions of these games. The arcade ones are significantly harder, and Donkey Kong actually has an entire extra stage that isn't in the NES version, so hardcore Donkey Kong fans have been grumpy about the lack of a proper home port of Donkey Kong for a while, and now that will actually be coming. But first, the original Mario Brothers, the one where you bop turtles from underneath. Actually, I have a friend who would be very happy about that. Also, next week, Conga Master Party, FIFA 18, and One Piece Unlimited World Red Deluxe Edition will be coming to the Nintendo Switch next week. 3DS, what you getting? 3DS is getting Yokai Watch 2 Psychic Spectres. Okay. And the Vita is getting Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony, SteamWorld Dig 2, and supposedly Summon Night 6 Lost Borders. I don't believe it. Anyway, moving on. Anime in theaters. As part of the whole G-Kids Fathom Events thing, where they are showing Studio Ghibli movies every month. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind will be in theaters September 24th, dubbed at 12:55 p.m. September 25th, subbed at 7 p.m. And September 27th, dubbed at 7 p.m. It'll be in a whole bunch of theaters. It's a bit more expensive because it's a Fathom Events thing, but I absolutely recommend Nausicaa. You can see, like, it and Laputa, you can see a lot of how they inspired a huge number of video games, especially Japanese RPGs. If you haven't seen Nausicaa and Laputa, those are like even if you don't pay attention to Miyazaki, if you love video games, those are the two you gotta see because they were so influential to video games as well as, being fantastic anime movies. So I recommend both. Nausicaa will be in theaters. It is a good old time. And that wraps up our new game releases this week and next week thing that we do at the beginning of the show. So, I'm going to kick you back to the music in a minute, but I gotta tell you something. I'm an idiot. Because last week I was like, isn't Tokyo Game Show going on? Why is no one reporting on it? I'm a little disconcerted. Nope, jump the gun. My bad. Tokyo Game Show is this week. We've got some interesting announcements coming out of that. So please stay tuned. I will kick you to the music. We've got By Chance by Ray Sremmerd. Ray Sremmerd. By Chance by Ray Sremmerd coming up next. And when we come back from a short break, we will begin going down the list of utterly insane announcements coming out of Tokyo Game Show, all of which make me very happy. So, please enjoy the music and stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was By Chance by Ray Sremmerd. This is GameBabble Live on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jel. So, I only got a few minutes before I have to hit you with another break, but let's get the most important announcement out of the way. So, if you tuned in last week, you know that I was nerding out about Penguin-kun Gira Gira Wars coming to the Nintendo Switch. It is a remake of an old, well, not a remake, more a hyper-updated evolution of an old 1985 game that I really, really liked. And, yeah, it's coming back out of nowhere. Last week, they finally released some footage of the game in action. Shortly after the show, the official trailer came out. And in that trailer, they announced that Penguin-kun Gira Gira Wars comes out in Japan tomorrow. In fact, due to time zones, it might even be out right now. The best news is that as a bunch of Americans were commenting on the preview video, the developers came out and said, Penguin-kun Gira Gira Wars will be coming to America. Please hold tight. We will release it in America through our American partners. The question, of course, being, is that going to be this week? Is that going to be next week? Or do I have to wait a full month? This is important because I don't think I can wait a month. I can wait a week. I don't think I can wait a month. I might be double dipping on this one because I'm kind of excited for it, in case you didn't know. Anyway, also, before we get into Tokyo Game Show madness, one of the strangest things was found in the Nintendo Switch. See, a bunch of people were hacking the Nintendo Switch and they found data for NES Golf in there. Like, the whole NES Golf ROM file is just in your Nintendo Switch firmware sitting there. So they're like, what's up with this? How do you play this game? Yo, why is it just sitting there in memory? Well, they figured it out. On July 11th, see, here's the thing. NES Golf was made by the late Satoru Iwata. And on July 11th, I'm not making this up, apparently if you take the Joy-Con controllers off your Nintendo Switch on July 11th and do Satoru Iwata's infamous direct to you motion, it will unlock the game. Direct to you. And apparently it has, like, support for motion control in it as well. It's a very interesting and surprising tribute to the late Satoru Iwata, and I don't think anyone expected it. So that's a good ways away for us to unlock some golf, but sure is interesting. Sure is interesting. Yeah. Huh. So yeah, that is those are some of our non-Tokyo Game Show news. As you're probably also aware, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite came out, and I was very surprised to see in the credits that Aiding was not involved at all. That made me a bit sad. A bunch of other companies were. Square Enix even contributed to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. I mean, EGAT, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's credits were really, really long, but no Aiding. For the record, Aiding is the company that made Tatsunoko vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. They are also the developers of Bloody Roar, so I'm really surprised that they were not involved with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. I don't know. That was a thing that I felt I needed to say. Also, all the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite DLC characters have been revealed. It will be Sigma, Black Panther, Female Monster Hunter, Winter Soldier, Black Widow, and Venom. So there will actually be more Marvel characters than Capcom characters in the game. Slightly strange, but I am actually kind of happy that Black Widow will be added to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite as DLC, even if the price tag is a bit... I guess it's not too bad, especially if I can buy the characters individually. I don't know. I really hope there's more characters after that, because Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's greatest flaw would be its lackluster character roster, thanks in no small part to the meddling of Disney being like, no X-Men! X-Men don't exist anymore. We don't have the movie rights to it, so we're not going to let you put it in there. Thanks, Disney. Thanks. Anyway, coming up next is Touch by Little Mix. We will have a short break, and then I will be back to tell you about all the madness going down at Tokyo Game Show. Until then, please enjoy Touch by Little Mix here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was It's a Trip by Joywave here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, Jell, and hey, guess what? I was wrong. Tokyo Game Show wasn't last week, it's this week. And of course, that means we've got a ton of announcements coming out of Tokyo Game Show. So let's get to one of the more big and interesting ones. Monster Hunter World will be released worldwide July... Was it July? I don't think it was July. I think it was January. I need to double check that one. The 26th of some month that starts with a J. I think I typoed this information. But it looks gorgeous. It has a story. I will get back to you on that as I search up what the actual release date is. It was late at night when I wrote this down, okay? Time zone differences. It's a darn shame I don't really like Monster Hunter. But this looks so beautiful and insane. I'll give it a rent. I will give Monster Hunter a 6th chance. I will give it a 6th chance. I keep wanting to like Monster Hunter, and it just never clicks with me. I'm really not a fan of the combat. But, moving on. You've probably heard me talk about Vanillaware on the show before. Well, guess what? Their most infamous of games, Dragon's Crown, will finally be coming to PlayStation 4. Now in 4K resolution as Dragon's Crown Pro. And let me tell you, the comparison images are hilarious. Because you can't tell the difference. I mean, Sony was using Dragon's Crown to sell their 4K TVs on the PS3 version. Because the game is already so gorgeous, but now it's like, no, it runs in 4K, and I'm like, I can't tell the difference. But it will also have reorchestrated music. Unfortunately, they're not really adding any new content, but the good news, the best news, the news that makes me really freaking happy, even though there's no new content, and I would have really liked some new content, Dragon's Crown Pro will be completely compatible with the PlayStation 3 and Vita releases of Dragon's Crown. So if you already own Dragon's Crown, good news. When Dragon's Crown Pro comes out, you'll have more players to play with. And speaking personally, I entirely intend on triple dipping. I love me some Dragon's Crown. I know I have at least one friend who's very excited about this, because he skipped out on last generation, and he just now picked up a PlayStation 4, so that way he could play Final Fantasy 12, because he loves that game. Like, literally, he spent all last generation just replaying Final Fantasy 12 again. So, yeah, he's very happy to hear that Dragon's Crown will be coming to the Pro, because when he came over, we played a lot of Dragon's Crown, because it's a good game. I know it doesn't quite jive with everyone, but it is nice. I should sit down and do an actual review of it, explaining the logic behind some of the design choices, because there's a lot of brilliance in it, but I can see how it would be kind of off-putting as well. Really? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's why I didn't do it. I don't know where I put my Dragon's Crown. Found it, and then I put it someplace safe, which means I can't find it. Anyway, that was not the only Vanillaware game they showed. They also showed more footage of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which is another Vanillaware game, this time taking place in the near future, modern day-ish, involving Japanese school children piloting giant robots. You know, the usual, except that's actually quite unusual from Vanillaware, who usually does fantasy games. I'm very curious to see what kind of game it is, because even though they've shown gameplay footage, you still don't know what kind of game it is. Like, it might actually just be sort of a visual novel at this point, because I've seen absolutely no action from 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I know it's side-scrolling, and this latest trailer shows that there are 13 different playable characters, so that's cool. But I don't know what the game is. I know I want it, because it's gorgeous, but I have no clue what the game is. Speaking of interesting announcements, though, oh egad, we've had some weird ones on the, I'm going to save that for later. We've got some interesting announcements on the Earth Defense Force front, and I think I might have a minute to explain that in detail. So we'll hold off on that for just a second. So, Dragon Ball FighterZ Z, they've shown more characters. Tien and Yamcha will be in it. But the most exciting news is that they are adding original character Do Not Steal Android 21 to the roster, who was designed by Akira Toriyama, and is a mad scientist woman who will be central to the plot, because the game actually does have a Guilty Gear style, almost anime-ish plot that, like, from what I hear, the storyline involves, like, fighting evil clones of everyone, so it's going to be a dumb plot, but a plot that makes sense for a fighting game, because there's going to be a whole lot of mirror matches going on. And it's sounding like Android 21 is going to be central to that. They're saying that she's probably the one who rebuilt Android 16. And, yeah, she looks like a go-go dancer. It is a very, very 70s character design. She's got, like, kind of messy curly hair, glasses, face looks kind of angry, and she's in this, like, red and blue large checkerboard mini dress. She looks like a go-go dancer. She's straight out of the 70s, but I'm very happy to see this, because, of course, you know, Dragon Ball Z is a little bit of a sausage fest. That's always been a problem, and this game knows that, unlike Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, Dragon Ball FighterZ knows that it's nice to have some female fighters in your game. I'm hearing rumors that Toa from Dragon Ball Xenoverse, sort of the game original villain, she's showing up. She showed up in Fusions as well. I'm hearing she might be a secret character, and then now we've got Android 21. And, yeah, I've always heard complaints about how Dragon Ball Z is a bit of a sausage fest, and a lot of people judge Toriyama based on that. And all I can say is, please don't. Like, don't judge Akira Toriyama based purely on Dragon Ball Z. He's honestly a very talented artist with some very interesting designs and very different manga. Like, Dragon Ball Z is his most popular work, but it is such an outlier for Toriyama, because he usually does comedy. He's more of a comedy guy. So, yeah, like, I highly implore you to look into any of his other work. The original Dragon Ball, Non-Z, is way more representative of Toriyama's work. There's also Sandland, there's Dr. Slump. Look into read, like, a chapter or two of his other manga to get a better idea of his actual work. Because Man, it always drives me nuts when people just judge Toriyama based entirely on Dragon Ball Z. I love me some Dragon Ball Z, but that's not all Toriyama can do. Blue Dragon wasn't entirely great either. Like, that had some of his blandest designs. He phoned that one in. But I love some of his work on the Dragon Quest series. Like, for starters. That's a good starting point. Look at Dragon Quest. By the way, there are 2 different Dragon Quest animes out there. One of which actually did air in America as Dragon Warrior at 4 in the morning, and I didn't know, and then it got canceled after 15 episodes because they didn't credit Akira Toriyama. Good job, Saban. Yeah, don't get me started. I'm going off on a tangent here. Okay, so, new Idolmaster game has also been announced. Big surprise. It's probably crap. I say this because Idolmaster is actually not as good a game as you think it is. Like, seriously, I imported a 360 to play Idolmaster and was thoroughly disappointed. It is not a music game, for starters. It is an idol management sim. Now, I like Princess Maker, so I like me some simulation games. I played Super Producers on the Dreamcast. I'm cool with an idol management sim. Idolmaster 1 was really shallow. I should probably give it a shot again, but yeah, it's a shallow, very shallow simulation game because you're really only juggling 3 stats. And the core gameplay, if you ever played the Pokemon contests, especially the ones in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, that's actually the central gameplay of Idolmaster. Like, when you do the talent competitions to get on TV, it works like the Pokemon contests. It's freaking identical. It's weird, too. Also, it would appear we're going to have to wait on some information on this one. I mentioned in a previous show that good old Tak Fuji is back again with an extreme music game coming to the Nintendo Switch called Gal Metal. They will be showing more information on the game at Tokyo Game Show tomorrow at 11:30 Japan time. They've got a countdown timer on the website I've got pulled up right now. So they will tell us more about the game in 21 hours and 45 minutes in Japanese. Either way, I'm excited because, hey, it's a character-driven music game, and I really like those. Speaking of the Nintendo Switch, Galgun 2 is coming to the Switch. Didn't see that coming. Yes, they're making a 4th Galgun game, Galgun 2, because numbering works. 3rd or 4th, depending on how you count Galgun VR. But Galgun 2 is coming to both PS4 and Nintendo Switch. And the big question I have is, will you have any sort of move support? Or tilt control support, or any support for that? Because Galgun's best with an actual light gun, since it's kind of a light gun rail shooter. If you're unfamiliar with Galgun, it is a very wacky game. Basically, imagine a light gun shooter like House of the Dead, except you are shooting schoolgirls with, like, love beams. It's very weird and silly. Like, it was literally created because it's made by Intercreates, and they didn't have any new games to make, like, when they made the first one. And they were like, write in a suggestion for what we should make next. And someone was like, I was just playing House of the Dead, and I thought, this game would be so much better if I was being chased by cute schoolgirls instead of zombies. And he submitted that, and the president of the company was like, that's brilliant. We'll make it. And so Galgun began. We missed out on the first game, which was originally released on 360 and had to get heavily censored in a patch, and then got a PS3 release that was way better and less censored. In fact, completely anti-censored even. Was more lewd. And then, but we never got that one. But we got the second one, which is Galgun Double Peace. Because a bunch of people were like, dude, I totally want to play that game. You should release it in English. And this really small developer, I think called P-Cube, really small publisher, P-Cube, did a very small U.S. release of Galgun Double Peace. I think I had to order it online. I think it was like Amazon only. Unless, you buy it digitally. But for a physical copy, I think I could only get it through Amazon. And then they recently did Galgun VR on PC, and I'm waiting for a PS4 release of that, please. Because that looks like it would be much better. And then now we've got Galgun 2 coming to the PS4 and Switch, and this is important. because it is going to be a test of Nintendo's resolve. See, Nintendo likes to be a very family-friendly company, and that can be to everyone's detriment, because they've gone a little silly with their censorship in recent years. The things they pulled with Fire Emblem Fates and Tokyo Mirage Sessions are some of the most extreme censorship I've seen this side of Persona 1. If you're unfamiliar, Persona 1 cut out half the game for the US release. People were not happy when they re-released the game on PSP. They fixed that. Oh yeah, and they Americanized all the character designs. All the characters got redesigned to make them more American. In the original release of Persona 1, way back in the day. They fixed all that for the PSP re-release. Totally retranslated the game, openly admitted the Ice Queen quest is back, so everything was fantastic when they re-released it on PSP. But, people were mad about that one. But yeah, Fire Emblem Fates and Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and not to mention a little bit of Xenoblade Chronicles X, all got hit with the censorship stick from Nintendo. A lot of people have been very, very displeased with Nintendo of America, and especially the Treehouse's handling of localizations recently. And yeah, so it is a big question of if they will allow Galgun 2 to be released in America uncensored. It's not a Nintendo-published game, so it should be out of their hands. But the reason why this matters is that these niche, lewd Japanese games, they're the canary in a coal mine for a lot of different systems. If you don't have these kinds of games on your system, then that means that there are barriers for releasing games, and it makes your system less attractive to developers. That's why I'm glad it's also coming to PS4, but it's going to be interesting to see if it comes out on Switch. Like, that was actually a big turning point, because the Xbox 360 used to get a lot of games like this. Then after the release of Galgun, because that came out after the Kinect, and a lot of people assumed it was going to be a Kinect game, Microsoft demanded the game be censored, and all the games of that type immediately moved to PlayStation 3, and any chance the Xbox brand had in Japan completely evaporated. Like, the 360 was clawing its way back up thanks to these kinds of games being allowed to be released on 360. The moment they started demanding censorship, 360 was done, and the PlayStation 3 reigned absolute supreme in Japan. The Nintendo Switch is going to have to look out for that. And I always felt this was one of the biggest flaws of the Wii U, was that it didn't have games like this. Because a lot of these games are not very system-intensive. They're made by very small companies. They very much work on stylized character designs rather than things that are high poly count. A lot of them are released on both PlayStation 4 and Vita, so they're things that the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch could handle easily. The fact that I didn't see these kind of games getting released on Wii U, I felt was a big problem, because it means that there was a pile of games that were coming out and not coming out on Wii U. I mean, and it is weird to think that the PlayStation Vita was getting way more games than the Wii U was. I know a lot of people think the Vita is dead, and certainly it is in America, but it's still going strong in Japan. I mean, there's a reason why I still read the Vita release list every week. We've got plenty of Vita games coming. It's a little weird, because so many people don't know that the Vita is still getting games. Not a whole lot, but, like, enough. In fact, that Secret of Mana remake is coming to the PlayStation Vita. So, that's a thing. It's certainly a thing to bring up. Anyway, one more announcement before we get to the break, and it is a Sonic Forces announcement. Get this. On launch day for Sonic Forces, you will be able to download completely for free the prequel Episode Shadow DLC, which lets you play 3 exclusive stages as Shadow, explains why Shadow is a villain again and what happened to Team Dark. It will also let you play as Shadow in any modern Sonic stage you beat in the main game when replaying them for score and stuff. Also, if you pre-order the digital edition, you get a Shadow costume for your original character, Do Not Steal. Good. Yes! I've given a full thumbs up on this one because, oh egad, that is like the pinnacle of fan pandering. I love that Sonic Forces is just going all in on giving the fans what they want. Like, in terms of very silly things. And, no, that makes me happy. It's free DLC. We get 3 more stages. And a new playable character. And it, of course, makes me wonder, will they release other characters as DLC down the line? I wouldn't mind paying a few bucks to play as a few other characters, especially if they get some exclusive stages, you know? Be on board with that. But for right now, hey, Shadow's going to be playable in Sonic Forces through some Day 1 DLC. So that will be free. Emphasis, that one's going to be free. So good times for everyone involved. I'm super happy. Sonic Forces looks so ridiculous. It's so cheesy. It's going to have a hard fight against the utterly fantastic Sonic Mania, but man, that is something magical. And on top of that, now someone from Sega is saying, oh, we might make a Sonic Adventure 3, since that's what the fans are demanding now. And I'm like, you know what, you can, as much as I love Sonic Adventure, you can hold off on that, because you've tried to make Sonic Adventure 3 twice, and it didn't work out either time. Because Sonic 06 was very much an attempt at a Sonic Adventure 3, and Sonic Unleashed technically is Sonic Adventure 3. The Japanese name is Sonic World Adventure. It is part of the Adventure series, so I think it's okay. I think, I don't know. Then again, I'm fine with Sega trying to experiment like every other Sonic game. You gotta be a little careful. You've kind of found a formula that works. I'd rather you stick to it, but we'll see how Forces goes down. I'm excited for it. Anyway, I do believe it is break time, so coming up next is Peter Pan by Calcia Ballerina. Here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Please stay tuned, because we're going to talk Earth Defense Force after a break. Thank you. Hello, you are listening to 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. That was California by Airborne Toxic Event, and before that was California by Big and Rich. A lot of songs about California called California. It's California-licious. Anyway, welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. Once again, I'm your host, Jell, and as I promised, we got to talk about some Earth Defense Force. So, at Tokyo Game Show, they showed more footage of Earth Defense Force 5, which is coming quite soon, it seems, at least in Japan. And they also announced Earth Defense Force Iron Rain. So, we've actually got 2 Earth Defense Forces on the horizon. And I didn't see that coming. If you are unfamiliar with the glorious Earth Defense Force series, allow me to fill you in. Way back on PS2, in Japan, there was a series known as the Simple 2000 series. Called that because they cost 2,000 yen, so they were a bunch of budget titles. Most of them were pretty crap, and they all had, like, "the" in the name. For some reason, that was their thing. And this was where One Chambara got its start, as well as Earth Defense Force. Now, Earth Defense Force is made by a company called Sandlot. And prior to this, they made a series of games about giant remote-controlled robots, which they did a spin-off of called Robot Alchemic Drive on PS2, which did get a US release, Rad Robot Alchemic Drive. It's actually pretty darn neat, at least when the giant robot piloting starts. You spend the first chunk of the stage just running around to different checkpoints, but when you finally get to pilot the giant robot, the sense of scale and the destruction is amazing because the city is fully destructible, and it even has a 2-player split-screen versus mode. It was really neat. And they decided, hey, let's take the engine from Robot Alchemic Drive, give you a rocket launcher, and fill it with giant bugs and robots and all sorts of things you'd shoot at in a sci-fi movie. And they released it as a budget game as part of the Simple 2000 series as Earth Defense Force. And it was an instant smash hit with 100 different weapons to collect and just tons of missions, because literally every mission was just, here's a city, we're dropping in a wave of all this kind of enemy. Good luck. Pretty soon it was followed by a sequel, Earth Defense Force 2, which added in a second playable character, the female Pale Wing, who has a jetpack and uses energy-based weapons. There are now 200 weapons to collect because of this. And there's a way greater variety of environments and enemies to fight. Now, it is worth mentioning that Earth Defense Force ran at a very, very bad frame rate on PS2. But it was a budget game. We didn't care. The sense of scale and destruction was just immeasurable and amazing. Unfortunately, these games didn't come to America. They got released in Europe under different titles. But in America, no. No, we didn't get them. We wouldn't get Earth Defense Force until Earth Defense Force 3. With the launch of the Xbox 360, D3 Publisher, the makers of the Simple 2000 series, was like, oh crap, making games is way more expensive than it used to be. We can't just keep making these budget games, and now we've got the Xbox Live Arcade market to contend with. So they were like, okay, you know what? Let's bankroll taking our two biggest and best games from the previous generation, Onei-Chanbara and Earth Defense Force, and try to make them into just below full-price games. So Earth Defense Force 3 was made, and that was released in America as Earth Defense Force 2017. It kind of rolled things back. It had 150 weapons to collect, but no Pale Wing, way less environments, way less types of enemies, but of course, way better graphics, way better frame rate, especially in America, because they drastically upgraded the game for the U.S. release, and it came out here as sort of a budget release. And when it came out, a few people grabbed it, but word of mouth turned it into a cult classic. Because, it could be played two-player split screen, at 80 different stages, 150 different weapons to collect, and just the sense of scale and destruction was insane. Because you had this entire city that you could level completely to the ground. And just, again, sense of scale, sense of scale, sense of scale. I can't say it enough. It felt like you were inside of a cheesy sci-fi movie. That is the entire premise of Earth Defense Force. Essentially, you know how in the Godzilla movie you have the little ground troops with their model tanks shooting at Godzilla? In Earth Defense Force, that's you. And yes, you do fight Godzilla in a couple of Earth Defense Force games, or non-copyright infringing knockoffs of Godzilla anyway. Shoot, they actually had the friggin' tripods from War of the Worlds in there. Like, Earth Defense Force, it's not just about shooting giant bugs. You start with giant bugs. It's about taking every cheesy black and white B sci-fi movie ever made and rolling it all into one game. You fight the tripods, you fight Godzilla, you fight giant robots, you fight giant ants, you fight giant spiders. All sorts of giant things are destroying Japan, and dang it, you're the Earth Defense Force. You are a faceless grunt with likely a rocket launcher. That's certainly my weapon of choice. And it's just you versus them. And there's a beauty to the simplicity of it. Because the mission structure, the reason why there's 80 different missions, there's just one environment. They built or a couple different environments, because they got the hills too. But they pretty much just built this one big destructible city environment. And they're like, okay, we're going to spawn you in at this point. We're going to spawn in 50 ants over here. Go. Oh, you beat that? Okay, we'll spawn you in at this point, and this time you'll fight 25 ants and 25 jumping spiders and 3 giant robots. Go. That's the general mission structure of Earth Defense Force. And beyond that, there's very little scripting in it. It's all pretty much just chaos. Just basic swarms of enemy AI versus your actions. Which is why the game doesn't really have checkpoints, and why the game can be very, very hard and very unforgiving sometimes. Because it's not like balanced to provide a smooth gameplay experience. No, it's just dump you and some enemies in a big old destructible city and just let chaos take over. Whatever happens, happens. So it is very plausible to lose a mission and have to restart. That'll happen a lot. And you will go back to the beginning of the mission. So it was a pretty challenging game, because, yeah, it didn't necessarily play fair. It didn't necessarily balance itself, but it was okay, because it worked in the context. You are being overwhelmed by giant aliens. Now, as this became more successful, a U.S. developer, the people who made Matt Hazard, which I don't think anyone remembers, Matt Hazard was a Duke Nukem Forever parody. I thought it was kind of funny. A lot of people did not. But the developers of Matt Hazard were like, hey, we're going to do an American-made Earth Defense Force, because they were partnered with D3 Publisher. It was called Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon, and it was terrible and screwed up everything. I've never seen a game so systematically ruin everything that makes a series good. Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon, if that is the only game in the series you have played, please play another game in the series. That game's garbage. Like, okay, the one thing I liked was that they pretty much implied that it was going on during the other Earth Defense Forces, but in America. It took place in Detroit instead of beautiful Senjo, which is the city that Robot Alchemic Drive and Earth Defense Force take place in. It's fictional city. Senjo actually means battlefield. It is the city of battlefield. But in this one, it took place in, like, Neo-Detroit, and it was terrible. Apparently, like, if that takes place in the same universe as Earth Defense Force 2017, then the takeaway is the U.S. branch of the Earth Defense Force is jaw-droppingly incompetent. The good thing was that it had 4-player online co-op with different classes. The bad thing, we didn't fight nearly as many giant ants, which were over-designed and only came up to our knees instead of towering over us. They didn't go flying when you shot at them. They utterly ruined the jetpack trooper, which, just egad. They did everything wrong. There was the enemies were just bullet sponges. There was no sense of impact, no sense of scale, no sense of being swarmed, and the game was ugly to boot, and just didn't work right, and it was really, really stupid easy, because instead of having those just dump you in a city, face a bunch of enemies, they made these long, drawn-out, overly scripted missions with a bunch of checkpoints, but if you lost, you still, I forget if you started at the checkpoints or if you had to start over, but it was the kind of thing that wasn't as designed to just be replayed over and over again. So the game actually came off as being really short, and Insect Armageddon was terrible. Thankfully, while this was going on, Sandlot was working on Earth Defense Force 4, which basically had the same concept, 4 different character classes, online 4-player co-op, but with a real Earth Defense Force. And, oh my god, it was pretty darn good. It came to America as Earth Defense Force 2025. Good times were had. But unfortunately, it came out so close to the release of the PlayStation 4, when everyone was just taking their PlayStation 3 games and porting them slightly enhanced to PlayStation 4, they did the same thing here. Especially because the PlayStation 3 release of Earth Defense Force 2025 did not run well at all. You wanted to play it on 360. Or PS4. The PS4 release got released in America as Earth Defense Force 4.1 Shadow of New Despair. It actually kept its Japanese title this time. And it added in a few more guns, few more stages, few more enemy types. The big thing was that it ran better. And then, after a pretty another year and a half, they actually tried doing a PC release of it on Steam. And apparently it works well, which shocked me. I have to understand, no Earth Defense Force game no good Earth Defense Force game has a smooth frame rate. Insect Armageddon kind of had a smooth frame rate, but at what cost? Earth Defense Force is all about chaos. It is not something you can control, and so frame rate drops are literally the nature of the game. It's part of its DNA. You can actually see Earth Defense Force 5 on PlayStation 4 will have a poor frame rate at times. It will have frame rate drops. Already confirmed. It's in the trailers. They literally don't worry about it because people know the sheer amount of chaos is going to cause frame rate drops. But interestingly, the PC release, well, if you have a beefy enough machine, you can actually play Earth Defense Force with a relatively smooth frame rate, which blows my mind. So that's where we're at. Now we got Earth Defense Force 5 coming out. And important thing to note is that Earth Defense Force doesn't have much of a canon. Believe it or not, Earth Defense Force 1 and 2, like, they were kind of related. Then 2017 and 2025, 3 and 4, those were kind of related. So I guess they're doing it in pairs. So Earth Defense Force 5 is a little bit of a reboot, sort of. The Invaders at least have a different name. Which, as a side note, they're not called Ravagers in Japan. They will definitely be changing their names once again for Earth Defense Force 5. If they keep the names, I will be shocked. Because the running joke with Earth Defense Force is essentially naming the aliens in different languages. I forget what the aliens were called for Earth Defense Force 1 and 2, but the Ravagers we know from Earth Defense Force 2017 and 2025... in Japan, they're not called Ravagers, they're called the Foreigners. And not Gaijin, Foreigner in English. Because foreigner means alien. It's the same word, they're synonyms. Yeah, they called them Ravagers for the US release. Good times. And yes, they do that again with Earth Defense Force 5. I'm not going to get into it, but I think that if they kept the names... The Japanese names for the Invaders, they might get in a little bit of trouble. So they will definitely be changing that. I'm not going to complain too terribly hard. Moving right along, though, what's surprising is that on top of Earth Defense Force 5, which will once again be 4 different classes, online co-op, tons of weapons, and apparently one of the pre-order bonuses is singing and dancing super deformed blow-up dolls of characters from Dream Club, which, that's just fantastic. On top of that, we have another Earth Defense Force spin-off from Yuke's this time, which are the people who actually make your wrestling games every year. Yuke's is making Earth Defense Force Iron Rain, which is using the same logo as Insect Armageddon. And it looks like it's going to be a more serious, story-driven Earth Defense Force spin-off with, like, actually pretty graphics and a smooth frame rate. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, but it already looks way better than Insect Armageddon ever did. So yeah, they're doing another, like, interesting spin-off. Hey, let's let another company take a crack at giving us their vision of Earth Defense Force. That's the beauty of it, is Earth Defense Force really is just a sandbox. It is just spawn you into a city, fight some giant aliens. There's no real canon. There's no real characters to Earth Defense Force. You are the faceless grunt that gets stepped on by Godzilla. Try to avoid getting stepped on by Godzilla. Good luck. So, that's Earth Defense Force. That probably made you pretty interested in it. I would probably tell you to wait until Earth Defense Force 5, because that's probably pretty close to on the horizon. I don't think we have a release date yet, but I think it comes out in Japan probably in January, and I don't know how far behind the US release is going to be, since they know we love Earth Defense Force here. It's got its cult following. I take my money. I'm on board. We're going to have giant frog people in this next one that can take cover behind buildings. So, I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Also, that should cover Earth Defense Force. I should probably mention Pokemon Go is celebrating the autumn equinox with an event. On September 22nd, game will celebrate the autumnal equinox, and with an event that revolves around catching Pokemon and hatching eggs. It will last until October 2nd. So from Friday to October 2nd, you'll be able, let's see, one of the biggest, I'm just going to read this right off of Silicon Era. One of the biggest news has to do with 2-kilometer eggs that will appear during this Pokemon Go event. When you collect such eggs from a gym or Pokestop, it will have a Chansey, Larvitar, or Mareep in it. When your eggs hatch, you will get double Stardust from them. Double Stardust will also be awarded for all catches. Should you find a Pokemon you haven't seen before, you will get triple the experience from it. There will also be item bundles sold during this Pokemon Go event. While prices were not revealed, Niantic did note that they will contain lucky eggs, lure modules, and super incubators. Super incubators are new to the game and hatch eggs 1.5 times faster than a standard incubator. So, there you go. Any Pokemon Go fans, you got some Pokemon Go-ery on the horizon. And, I think we're going to get to our last non-VR announcement. When we come back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to say a little bit about a new game announced called Left Alive that looks relatively interesting, though there's a certain element of it that makes me kind of sad. And then, after that, there have been some very interesting PlayStation VR announcements from Tokyo Game Show, and we will wrap the show up with that. But until then, let us enjoy What About Us by Pink here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Please stay tuned. We've still got a little bit more show to go. But first, a short... Hello and welcome back to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. That was No Limit by Usher, and this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, Jell, and once again, this is GameBabble Live. So, speaking of live, I was going to tell you about a game called Left Alive that was announced at Tokyo Game Show. It is actually a spin-off of the Front Mission series, which is Squaresoft's big mech strategy series, though they did make some action game spin-offs. This one does not carry the Front Mission name because they want to take place in the same universe, but they don't want it to just be about giant robots. This game is actually going to take place on foot for the most part, but will have some mecha sections. It will be a third-person shooter with some stealth elements, and the most interesting thing about it was one of the people behind it, which, if this website will, there it is, Toshifumi Nabeshima, apparently joined Square Enix in 2015 and is working on this game, and this is a very interesting development. Unfortunately, game developers, a lot of people who work on them, remain relatively unknown, and we may not know what we have until it's gone. The reason why this guy matters is that he was the head guy behind the Armored Core series. In short, From Software's big mecha guy. Here's the thing. Before Dark Souls, From Software was the giant robot company. They made mecha games. That was what they did. And ever since Dark Souls, they haven't really done that. And this guy left after writing the script for Dark Souls 2. This makes me worried, because I'm a little bit strange. I'm actually a huge fan of From Software, but I don't like Dark Souls. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm not a big fan. But I love their mecha games, and I love their non-mecha games. Ninja Blade, I think, is on par with Bayonetta. I think Ninja Blade is a sorely underrated game. For different reasons. Like, the combat isn't as deep as Bayonetta, but the stage design is some of the best in 3D action game history, if you're not offended by QTEs, because that game is caked with QTEs. Ninja Blade is a sorely, sorely underrated gem. And I am concerned, because I'm like, did everything that made From Software good leave because they did nothing but Dark Souls? Could the From Software I know and love be dead? It just kind of makes me sad to realize that could be a thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Thankfully, From Software has said they are done with the Souls series. Dark Souls, at least. They could still make a new Bloodborne. But they said they have 3 games in development. I think they already confirmed they're making a new Armored Core, so it is a question of if they can carry on without Toshifumi Nabeshima. They've said they want to do a sci-fi mecha game and give it a bit of the Souls touch, which I'm not sure how well that's going to turn out. But we will certainly see. I'm very skeptical about a lot of this. Like, if From Software has just become the Dark Souls company, then they can go screw themselves. I'm here for their creative game design, brilliance in the realm of action games, and, of course, their mecha expertise, as Armored Core was one of the deepest and finest giant robot productions ever made in the history of video games. The mech crafting is utterly absurd. So I'll be very sad if that's the case. Either way, Toshifumi Nabeshima now works at Square Enix and is making this, and that might mean, unfortunately, I don't like stealth games, but I am very interested to see how Left Alive turns out. So that's where I am at, most certainly. And yeah, I already told you all about Earth Defense Force 5. We are waiting for more information. Oh, hey! Now there's some news before we move on to VR. Final Fantasy 15 Comrades launches October 31st. If you're unfamiliar, this is literally the thing that's going to get me to buy Final Fantasy 15. Basically, what Comrades is it turns Final Fantasy 15 into an MMO, or an MMO light. You'll be able to create your own custom character and play online with friends to just go out into the wild and slay monsters in the world of Final Fantasy 15, and it will be an expansion pack for it. Let's see, multiplayer expansion will launch October 31st. The expansion will be available to players who purchase Final Fantasy 15 in the Season Pass, or can be purchased separately. PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live Gold membership is required to play. Takes place after the infamous Chapter 13. Oh, there's a new trailer for it. All very, very, very intriguing. I'm super hyped to see how this goes down. This is going to get me to play 15 because I skipped out on 15 because I felt the combat was kind of shallow and I didn't care about any of the characters and the story wasn't going anywhere. it was like, I kind of like the world, but I'm not really on board with anything else, especially the characters. So when they say, oh, hey, you get to make your own character and run around Final Fantasy 15, it's like, oh, maybe I'll actually play the main game. So this is definitely a thing. I look forward to getting a chance to play this. Now, let us move on to the thing that only I care about, VR, the PlayStation VR. There have been some interesting announcements, especially because just like the other day, another video going, what happened to VR, came out on YouTube, and it was, again, pretty dumb. Because it's funny, like, I need to read the comments, because people are saying that the tides of the comments on that have really turned. That more and more people are getting on board with VR, and this is all very interesting to me, because, of course, the common narrative is that VR was a complete flop and it didn't work out. But this video was a bit smarter than the usual, and what it said was, does VR have a chance, or will it forever be a niche hobby? That was the term I was looking for. Niche hobby. That perfectly describes the current state of VR. Because, yes, right now it hasn't hit the mainstream. Right now it's too expensive. Right now there's not enough good games on it. But there's people like me who are completely obsessed with this stupid thing. And some of them can actually make games. So there is a surprising number of indie games coming out for VR every week. Sony releases new PlayStation VR games onto PSN. People are keeping VR alive, and I think that's necessary, because what VR needs to succeed is to be, like, the technology is here. It just needs to be cheaper and have more games on it. And you're not going to get that by just sitting on it and going, we'll try again in another 20 years. That's not going to fix that problem, because the price point of VR actually stagnated for 20 years between the 90s and the release of the HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, and PlayStation VR. We're not going to get that price down unless those keep being produced. And I don't expect everyone to go out and support VR. No, I'm saying next console generation, I think it'll take off. But, like, there are people who just can't wait and want to see what it's all about, and those VR hobbyists are certainly the people who are keeping it alive, who will experiment and find out what works and what doesn't work as VR starts to become more mainstream. Remember, all of media, all entertainment started as a niche hobby. Video games started as a niche hobby. Comics started as a niche hobby. Shoot, friggin' movie making started as a niche hobby. It all starts that way, and I would say that is a huge improvement over where VR was about 5 years ago. Where was VR 5 years ago? Oh, right, a thing of the past. You couldn't really play VR games unless you went out and built your own headset or and then built a game for it. Or had one of the old headsets from the 90s and managed to still get it to work. Or actually owned a virtuality pod from the old arcades and the Amiga to run it on. Yeah, a little thing a lot of people don't realize about the old 90s VR, that was back in 1991. And all those pods you saw in Exhilarama and all the arcades that used to exist, those were running on Amigas. Because the Amiga was the only system powerful enough to generate enough flat-shaded polygons to render a world. Technology might have not been there yet, but it's here now, and now we just got to get the price down and refine things. But you're not going to get to that point unless, someone's keeping it alive. And so, yes, right now, VR is very much a niche hobby. It is certainly not going to be AAA. Because, let me put it to you like this. PlayStation VR, doing very well. It has sold over 2 million units worldwide. Oh, how much does a AAA game need to break even? Well, they usually sell about 3 million, and they want 5 million. You can't get 3 million in sales on a PlayStation VR game. Not unless it's like a bonus mode, like Resident Evil 7. But you're not going to get that kind of return on investment in a VR game right now. It's just impossible. So the only AAA things are the stuff that, Sony is bankrolling. So that's where we're at with that. But in spite of all these things I'm saying, at the Sony press conference, guy actually had to get on stage at Tokyo Game Show and say more PSVR stock is on the way. Because I've heard that it's actually kind of hard to find a PlayStation VR in Japan. They're a bit easier to find here in America, but there are times when they can get a little tricky to locate. They're not produced in incredibly large numbers due to their high price, probably high production cost, and the strange demand for it. So yeah, that's kind of a thing. It's very interesting that he would get on stage and say this. Now, there were two major, mind-blowing PlayStation VR announcements. First, I mentioned this on the show quite a few months back, but Gungrave VR has been shown. We have gameplay footage of it. It looks weird. I can't wait to play it because Gungrave is back. Gungrave was an old PS2 game that I would really describe as more like a hack and slash with guns than I would an actual third-person shooter. Because you don't actually aim. The aiming is very automatic. It's very much a button masher with guns. But oh, it was fun, and it was very interesting because that was back when cell shading was super new and people were experimenting with it. And the original Gungrave actually had very dark cell shading. It had very high contrast. It was interesting to see a dark atmosphere with cell shading. The second game lacked that, and honestly, Gungrave VR is friggin' bright and colorful and almost comic book Overwatchy. It's very weird. But apparently they actually got the old Gungrave team back together to make this, which is surprising because Red Entertainment went out of business and got bought by a Chinese company. The old developers scattered to the four winds, but they've reunited them to make Gungrave VR, which looks like it's going to be played with a controller, mostly be third person, but switch to first person with head tracking based aiming. I have no clue what to think of Gungrave VR, but I'm just glad to see it back. You know what else I'm glad to see back? Konami, they're making a game. I know, right? I thought Konami hated games. If you're unfamiliar, Konami has been screwing up royally recently. Yeah. Hideo Kojima left the company on very bad terms. The atmosphere there was terrible, and they pretty much just made nothing but pachinko machines for a while and got a lot of pushback. Well, now they seem to be slowly getting back into the making games game, and at E3 they announced something utterly mind-blowing. They will be releasing Zone of the Enders, the second runner, on PlayStation 4 with 4K support and VR support. You will be able to, it won't require VR, you can just play it in 4K if you want to, but you can actually play through the entirety of Zone of the Enders second runner in a first-person cockpit view in VR. My mind is blown. I'm super happy. That sounds amazing. Zone of the Enders 2 was a really fun game, and, it was a PlayStation 2 game that still looks really, really good today because of how heavily stylized it was. So yeah, get that running at 4K. You can pop that in VR, no problem. It's a PS2 game, for crying out loud. Yeah, you can generate 2 images at a decent resolution in that and get it running at 60 FPS, which is what VR needs. And I'm just like, this is going to be amazing. I can't wait. That's like my mind is blown repeatedly over and over again. It just won't stop exploding. Zone of the Enders in VR. That's how you do it. And it's great because it's like, of course, because you already have like 90% of the game made. You just gotta, staple on that VR mode, get it working right, and then you have like a full-fledged good game that can be played in VR. I'm super excited for that. Like, my excitement is through the roof for both Gungrave VR and Zone of the Enders 2 VR, which, again, will not require VR. You can just play it in 4K if you want to, which, again, very good call. Also, I'm hearing Ace Combat 7 will support VR for the entire game. Gran Turismo Sport will just have a separate VR mode, which people are disappointed in. Speaking of disappointment, I should probably mention that Happy Manager has cut its VR support. Happy Manager was announced by D3, the budget developer, as a VR dating sim for the PlayStation VR. The game then got pushed back, and now they are cutting out the VR support, so it will just be a regular dating sim, and then they're going to patch in VR support later. I've heard that line way too many times now, and it pisses me off. It will be limited VR support at that, and I'm like, well, then I guess there's no point to playing your game now, is there? See you later, suckers. Like, real talk, no. Whew, so that is where we are at. I'm super excited to try Final Fantasy 15 Comrades. Let me see if there is anything else to report. No, not really. Minecraft Better Together update is delayed on the Nintendo Switch, but that looks to be about it. Yeah. So, having a good time. Very much enjoying some of the things I'm hearing at Tokyo Game Show. I can't wait to see what Gal Metal is, because I trust Tak Fuji to provide me with an extreme experience. I'm glad to hear he's doing well after his skateboard injury, because he is the most extreme Japanese game developer ever. He made Frogger Extreme with Frogger 3D, so I'm curious to see what happens. Tak Fuji is my bro. I love him. So that is where we're... Oh, I forgot to check when Monster Hunter World release date. It's January, isn't it? Yeah, early 2018. January 26th. Thank you. Okay, I thought so. I typed July. January 26th, Monster Hunter World will be released worldwide. So good times there. Once again, let us, just a quick reminder, before we close out the show, this next week will be Deaf Culture Awareness Week here at Florissant Valley Community College. We'll have a bunch of events going on all throughout the week for that. And on Friday, We will have a interview with Zepparella, an all-female Led Zeppelin tribute band, and that will be sometime during Kenny's show, which is from 8 to 11. 8 a.m., 11 a.m., I'm assuming. So, from 8 to 11, sometime in there will be a interview with Zepparella here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. So, please tune in for that. You might enjoy that. And, that concludes today's episode of GameBabble Live. I hope you have enjoyed. I am super excited about a lot of the things I'm hearing at Tokyo Game Show. And I can't wait to get my hands on that Penguin Coon Wars. Future of esports is here. Cancel Evo. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you tune in next week. Again, that will be at Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. I've been your host, Jel, and this has been GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Coming up next, we have Toothbrush by DNCE. Please enjoy. Thanks again for listening. See you.